We've talked about this interesting thing before of why hasn't Keir Starmer actually talked too much about Brexit? And a lot of people are just saying, "Oh, he's given up the fight. He doesn't want to touch it. It's too toxic at the moment for him to even discuss." However, however, I am one of these people who believes that Starmer has set a very, very, very clever trap, not only for Boris Johnson, but essentially for the entire Tory party themselves. You see, run up to, shall we say, before Boris was crowned, and shall we say, the rest of the sensible Tories were just swept away. There were Tories who were, oh my god, what the hell are we doing? Can someone please make a sensible decision? Now, I always go over this fact, but in the series of indicative votes we had a couple of years ago now, only about 64, 65 of the MPs voted just to up and leave the EU without a deal, which surprisingly is what seems to be the next backbench rebellion scheme against Boris Johnson to try and essentially get him to just kick and withdraw the withdrawal agreement for what seems to be, you know, just so they can get some form of the true Brexit. Um, but you lose state of what the true Brexit is because it just seems to constantly change at a whim. Um, and I think a big part of this, a big part of the trap that Starmer has set is okay, we want nothing to do with this mess, so we're going to let you own it. And this is essentially what he seems to be the plan of him to so far do. All indications are that this is probably the thing that he's just going to do. He's just going to let Brexit happen and just say, hey, the Tories were in charge. This was Boris's plan. This was the Tories' plan. They're the ones that, screwed everything over for the country with Brexit. We had nothing to do with it. And to a great extent, that is actually quite a fantastic plan because remember, a lot of these red walls that very enthusiastically wanted Brexit, voting thinking that somehow they will get, somehow the Tories are going to magically remember that the North exists and the investment's going to come flowing in. The thing that was ruining their lives wasn't Tories and their austerity plans, it was actually the evil EU. And to some point, you can go north now. And we've seen a couple of news channels go north and interview these people about, would you vote Tory again? And some of them have been very emphatically, no, the only reason I voted for them was because I wanted Brexit. After that, I'm never voting for them again. That seems to be one of the key things. However, some of the people so far, the others, shall we say, are going, well, it was the first time I voted Tory, and I think Boris is doing a good job, even though objectively Boris is not doing a good job. Their lives are not going to change. Their lives are going to get objectively even worse than they are now. To really win back these voters, all Starmer has to do is just, let the Tories fail big, and that's all he has to do. The big problem that really faces the party is that a lot of these people are very not engaged when it comes to politics. And I really wish a lot more people in this country were engaged when it comes to politics, because that would be a massive sea change in this country. Because I tell you now, the Tories would be nowhere near the wheel of power. Nowhere near. David Cameron, after the election where he won, the Tories won after the coalition, nowhere near would have even been allowed in. Nowhere near would have anyone had they been politically active and turned on, knowing what was going on with the UK and the EU, they would have never, in a month of Sundays, voted to leave the European Union. But here we are, and that is a big problem we need to solve in this country. But that is a video for another time, because today we're talking about Keir Starmer and this. Now, this is very interesting because this comes and backs up my idea again that this is what Starmer is doing, that he's setting a trap for Johnson and the Tories. And this comes from a former, I think he's a former MP or MEP, I can't remember exactly now, somebody called Claire Moody, and she wrote this for the West England Byline Times. And the title is, Brexit belongs to Johnson and Labour will not let him shirk it. As a true believer in the UK staying in the EU, and as a Labour member and a recovering politician, I get asked a lot about why Labour, and Keir Starmer in particular, hasn't been much more vocal on Brexit. These questions are asked particularly at crunch moments, such as the deadline for asking for an extension to the transition period. The answer is simple and twofold. It wouldn't change the outcome of this year, and it would damage Labour's chances of winning an election, and though that's starting the process of restoring the UK's reputation on the world stage. To best understand Keir and the Labour Party's position, we must look forward. Boris Johnson has an 80-seat majority. It's true that the majority looks more flaky than historical majorities of that size on issues such as China, but one issue is rock solid, and that is Brexit. Any vestiges or openness on Brexit on his backbenchers were lost when MPs were expelled from the Tory party and subsequently from Parliament late last year. That means there is no parliamentary mechanism for changing Johnson's course. Johnson and Dominic Cummings have decided we are completing the transition period at the end of the year, ready or not. And whether they like it or not, they must now know that they must be there, that must be them made to own that decision. So Labour can't change the outcome. Why not at least highlight the alternative, or an extension, or on being very pro-EU? To answer one question with another, why would you do exactly what your opponent wants you to do? The SNP, Lib Dems and Labour, in chronological order of decision making, tried that and went for a general election at the end of last year, and it backfired badly, except perhaps for the SNP. Johnson and Cummings are desperate for Labour to oppose their plans of ending the transition period on the 31st of December. They want to define themselves against an enemy as a way of portraying themselves as insurgents, as the voice of the people at Westminster, against the elite or the establishment. They want to put Labour firmly into the elite category. They always describe Keir Starmer as Sir Keir Starmer and want us to use his background as a lawyer for that purpose. And until they realise the public must see that plus or other a minus. This tactic was clearly on display when the SNP had an opposition day debate on extending the transition. Labour abstained, but Tory MPs in the red wall seats all obediently tweeted that the Tory party, by saying Labour just refused to back making sure that we take back control of our borders at the end of the year. Sir Keir Starmer once said that he respected the referendum result, but you just can't trust a word he says. Labour is determined not to give Johnson any ammunition and to deny him the cloak of showing division and anger. Using that diversion and anger to distract the journalist and the voters from looking at the substance of his government's actions. Distracting from the substance is another very important part of Johnson's and Cummings' strategy. The famous three-word slogans are deliberately empty of definition or policy outcomes. They use words that every individual will interpret to mean something they value. Who doesn't value being in control or having sovereignty? But control over what? And what do you use your sovereignty for? Each individual will have a personal, sometimes unconscious response to those questions. Neither carries any substance in themselves, nor any suggestion of what cost or the consequence might be. In that same cost consequence free way, they also use the concept of rights without ever recognizing that there were rights and there are rights and also responsibilities. It's Britain's right to do this and that and that and the other. Another trait is the near pathological fear of taking responsibility, which has been demonstrated throughout Johnson's response to COVID-19. And he's claiming that either he just followed the science or it's up to the employers and individuals or local authorities to make the decisions. In short, they have never deliberately defined the price, and they think that it's worth paying to achieve the rights, control and sovereignty they claim they are going to deliver, nor have they owned any of the consequences. Instead, they have used every tool they can to say, look over there, look at those people stopping us and thwarting your will. This has to change. What is new in 2020 is that the leaders of the Leave are now completely responsible for implementing their project. No one can stop them, and they must have nowhere to hide when the consequences of their actions become clear. So Labour's strategy is to hold them to the promises for which they now have the responsibility to make good. Rachel Reeves, who shadows the Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove, challenges him on where his oven-ready Brexit deal is, and it is vital for businesses and jobs. She's challenging him on being inconsistent with the Tory party manifesto promises and the political declaration which they boastfully signed up to last October. She visited the huge lorry park being built in Kent to deal with the new customs formalities, and pointed out that the total lack of consultation with the people that will be directly affected. She will keep on challenging Gove on delivering on these sunny uplands he and others have always promised Brexit would deliver. Keir is challenging Johnson on competence, not just in questioning Johnson on his own competence, but also modelling a more serious approach to politics. Even this government's allies acknowledge its response to COVID-19 has given Keir more than enough evidence for prosecution on competence. Johnson cannot use his bombast against Labour in the same way about the coronavirus as he would delight in doing about Brexit. Johnson wants to put on a pantomime. In contrast, Keir demonstrates that he understands the seriousness of this pandemic. Of course, Johnson will try and make the EU the villain of their pantomime. But if the Labour strategy succeeds, and with the help of Johnson himself, the reputation for incompetence, untrustworthiness and general clownish behaviour will not only be tied to the government, but also to their project. Brexit happened at the end of January, when we left the political and institutional embrace of the EU. And there was very little real-life impact as a consequence of that. But this government's choice, there is going to be finally evident of real-life cost when the economic Brexit of leaving the single market and customs union happens at the end of this year. And that needs to be absolutely unambiguous that it is Johnson, Cummings and Gove's choice to make the rest of us pay that price. Labour and Keir in particular cannot change the course Johnson has chosen of delivering a harsh economic Brexit at the end of 2020. What can be done is to remove any distractions from the promises that were made to the British people, from the Leave campaign of 2016 to the Tory manifesto of last December, and to make it perfectly clear who is responsible for the outcome. By not playing Johnson's game, Keir is ensuring that those responsible will indeed be held accountable. And this is something that I've said right from the very beginning. Until the real life consequences are felt, and trust me, they will be felt, at this very moment in time, as I'm doing this, we had a report flashed up this morning that we are having the biggest increase in unemployment this country has seen in years. So that is the first thing that this coronavirus crisis has caused. And despite the promises of Rishi Sunak saying that unemployment should not be the cost of this, we are seeing that rising constantly, despite him being told numerous times that the government had to do more to help these people and to help stop businesses becoming unemployed. And that's where real life consequences will start to take effect. Because remember, Brexit is the Sunny Hill Uplands. So surely, when we finally leave the customs union single market next year, should this all not go away? No. We're in, and we are in for a really, really bad couple of years in this country. And I tell you now, the people who are to blame are Johnson, the Brexiteers, Grove, everyone who voted and pushed for Brexit in the Houses of Parliament are to blame for this. It is their fault. Now, what about Brexit supporters? I've said multiple times, they are not to blame. They got fooled, bamboozled, and conned out of it. And at the end of the day, you do not blame the person who was conned, you blame the con artist. And when it comes, that anger of blaming those people, that is the point where we have to come in and turn that anger into something that can be really constructive, such as restarting the movement to rejoin the EU. And we can turn it into other things as well, but again, that's a discussion for another time, I think. So yeah, let me know what you think below. I definitely think that this seems to be the strategy that Labour is going in, just to make Johnson own it. I do think that is the best thing of all, because everything they have done has been because of the Conservative Party. You know, Brexit is the Conservative Party's project. They've got no one else to blame now but themselves. They have an 80-seat majority for the next 4 years. We have currently in the midst of a pandemic where our leader is acting completely clownish and has made numerous mistakes, which has helped the pandemic in numerous ways. We are sitting right on the edge of a recession where not only, again, Johnson, but our Chancellor has refused to really go in and take measures. There was, again, an emergency budget which has done nothing, but we hopefully, you don't know, there might be different changes, expect more austerity in October when the autumn budget gets announced. That's where we are, and that's the unfortunate situation we're in. And it's about time these people who pushed for Brexit take the consequences of what they wanted, because they promised that it would all be sunny uplands, and it's not going to turn out to be that way any way, shape or form.